feeling called to do a bit of a mediumship reading, and I don't know who is going to come through here, but I am outside and I find it a lot more flowy to connect to like more random mediumship messages when I'm outside. So I feel like someone has something to say. A betrayal that did not manifest is what I'm seeing. A betrayal that did not manifest. Who is this that's coming through? We have the Emperor. We have the Emperor and the Empress. This feels like a message coming through from a set of grandparents who have passed. So if this message is for you, you're someone who's lost both grandparents on one side. This does feel like they were together when they passed. Maybe not like literally together when they passed, but like they still were in an active relationship upon both of their passings. Okay, so this feels like a message that's coming through about the parents. So this would be a grandparent message to the grandchild, which would be you. And the message here is a healing message in reference to a father or mother wound of sorts. Let me grab my other deck. There's a message here of it's time to put it behind you. It's time to allow yourself to move forward. There's a loneliness wound that's coming out. And this feels to be in reference to what would be your parents and their child. Fear of vulnerability. So a loneliness wound and a fear of vulnerability. And if you look, this card has, he's all tied up in tape that says fragile. This feels like parents who were not really there for you in the way you need it emotionally. And with the fear of vulnerability, it's like this has caused a pattern to erupt in your life where as soon as someone feels to be too close to you, you start to doubt yourself or shame yourself or question yourself. And the message that's coming through from what would be your grandparents, again represented by the Empress and the Emperor, it was never your fault. And there was nothing else that you could have done differently that would have changed the scenario, because it wasn't you that they were mistreating or it wasn't you that they were pushing aside. It was their wound. And they were stuck with the Hangman. They were stuck in the energy of this wound. It wasn't you that caused it, and it wasn't even you that exasperated it. It was the way that they were unable to face it that triggered them. It was the way that they were unable to face it that triggered them. And almost look at this. It's like the guy in the background, like, what the heck, what the heck? Like the shadow itself was like, hey, can you stop avoiding me? Can you pour some love into this so that we can heal? And they weren't ready. They weren't ready to choose happiness, because happiness is a choice. But once you choose it, then you have something that you could lose. And it feels like that's a major fear of what your parents were facing, that they were really trapped in. They were trapped in that fear. And they didn't have the proper tools to fight against what they were trapped in. So they just silenced themselves into submission. They silenced themselves into letting the wound win and mistreating you, because that was a projection of them mistreating their own self. And there's the King of Swords. We have the Emperor and the Empress coming out for the grandparent energy, and the King and Queen of Swords coming out for the parent energy. There's this feeling of them forgetting how to connect back to source because of so many years of suppression or repression. And as I said that, a bug just bit my ankle. It's almost like every time they'd start to speak to get the help they needed, as in the parents, something would cause them more pain than they were willing to face. and they didn't trust themselves to explore that wound any further, and they let the devil win here, or they let the toxic energy win here. If I could have 2 cards from the grandmother energy about this, what would we have? Not surprisingly, we have the Lovers, and 8 of Cups in reverse on the bottom of the deck. Do not walk away from yourself. Do not betray yourself. Do not leave yourself behind just because they didn't know how to create the space for you that you needed. Don't let that be a pattern of leaving yourself behind just because you feel left behind by them, because it was not your fault, and their healing also is not your responsibility. So it's not something that you should be taking on for yourself, is what I'm getting from the grandmother. It's something that you need to have compassionate release for. And 2 cards from the grandfather. 2 cards from the grandfather. This would be the compassionate release that she just referenced. Knight of Cups in reverse. Don't keep pouring all your love into someone who's only going to hurt you. Take that and pour it into yourself. It's almost like there's this feeling of trying to convince other people that you're worthy, but they're not going to be able to see that with the moon, because they are so deep in the avoidance of their own emotions that they don't have the space to comprehend yours. There's no clarity there. If I could have 1 card from each, the grandmother and the grandfather, to wrap up this message. Grandmother. We are so connected. Bubbles and water may be significant. And from the grandfather. When feathers appear, angels are near. You are protected. So your grandparents are telling you, we are very much with you, protecting you. And this is a message of protection. The message of protection is pour into yourself. It's not selfish. It was never your fault. And you were given this mountain because you're strong enough to climb it. So allow yourself to feel your feelings so that you can release them.